Just a couple quick notes as we get going. This is the one interview where I might say, depending on kind of your preferences, you might want to skip the first 15 minutes because it's either going to be really relevant to you or kind of dull to you. Derek Miner joins me, and for the first 15 minutes, we talk about an article I wrote for Relevant Magazine that has to do with Christians and hip-hop. If you're not into that, just skip right to the 15-minute mark when we get into the social issues, because from there on out, it's gold for everybody. By the way, you gotta probably check Derek out real quick. Here you go.
I put the game on my back like a jam sport. Pay attention, you might learn more. Follow God, increase your test score. Swerve out your lane, that's a crash course. I'm in East Nash sipping lattes. We're pine wood with my Padres. Planning how we about to change the game. Undefeated in this 2K. This adversity, my universe.
By the way, if you're like, man, that's good, I like that, but I haven't really familiarized myself or heard of Derek Miner before. He's been out on 2 stadium tours this year, so I think a lot of people are kind of in that boat where he's really kind of swinging up in his career. So you like what you heard, go ahead, go check him out wherever you discover new music. Just one other note before we get into this thing, and it's about episode number 31, because I think some people are going to say, oh man, we're doing more Christian stuff and more, somebody who leans conservative. The next episode definitely is not that. My accountant, Ash, who grew up in a Hindu family in Flint, Michigan, comes on because we've got several things to tie together. One of them is that, there was just a bombing of a mosque in Minnesota over the weekend. We're at the 5-year anniversary of the massacre of Sikhs worshiping in a Sikh temple in Milwaukee. And also there's been murders of multiple Indian Americans this year by white supremacists who are too dumb to not realize that they're Hindus and not Muslims. So those 3 religions, worldviews, whatever you want to call them, that all come out of like the India, Pakistan, Punjab region, are tied together in the American consciousness when they're actually 3 very different things. So we unpack those. Also, I am trying to get a lot more liberals on the show. Honestly, they're just harder to book. And I don't want to say any negative thing about anybody that's turned me down so far. But for example, I just reached out to a writer from Cosmopolitan who's a liberal that spent a weekend with some conservative women, and she wrote about that. And she just will not come on the show. And it's so weird to me because I'm like, hey, the show's about, common ground. And she just flat turned me down. And I don't know if it's because of the temperature of the way politics is right now, that everybody thinks that somebody just wants to get them on there to trash them. And I was saying that over and over again, like, that's not what's going on here. I just want to talk to you. I want to find some common ground. So I am working at increasing the diversity of who's on. And the next episode, like I said, we're going to veer off from Christianity and talk about these other religions and, what it's like to not be Muslim, but have some people think that you are Muslim, and therefore you have to be a little bit nervous about your safety. Anyway, let's get into this thing. My name's Seth Towerherd. Let's be neighbors again.
And if we can't walk in love, we're a noisy little gong, a bitter little song that a bully sings out of key. And if we can't walk in peace, we'll forget about the least of these. A mother crying on her knees for a boy who's locked away. There's a voice calling me.
Just went to kindergarten. Are you done crying yet? Like it's after lunch when we're recording. So are you
okay?
Hey,
I'm trying to hold it together. That's my little man, y'all.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm trying to hold it together. That's my little buddy. So,
well,
yeah.
I think that's pretty universal. Like, first kid in kindergarten, it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna lie. Like, being at the house and both my kids were in school was like lit. Like, I was chilling. I watched Sports Center for the first time in 5 years today. So, usually it's on like Sprout or Disney XD or something. So, life is good.
You got a lot to catch up on. You're like, wait a minute, where'd the Seattle Sonics go?
Right. I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. Jordan retired? Hold on.
And he's crying so much now. Why is he crying?
Yeah, why is he crying so much? it's rough.
We jumped into a conversation on Twitter, and I kind of just said, let's hold up on this thing. And I want to bring you on the podcast to talk about it. We'll talk, maybe we'll touch on the article I wrote real briefly, because I don't know how much the audience cares about that, because this is kind of a different crew than a lot of the writing stuff that I do. So
Yeah.
I covered a beef going on in Christian hip hop right now. You kind of spoken out about and just said, like, hey, there needs to be more unity here. And I don't know if you read my article. I don't think I actually came down. I don't think I came down where you did. I think I was good with I'm a big believer in things being debated in a public forum as long as it's respectful. And I'm okay with that. Like, I didn't see any problem with any of it, really.
Yeah, I think that's cool, but I think it's a way that there's a way to do it, to debate. Like, man, when we talking rap, we're talking about the rap culture, right? Rap culture. In regular rap, if you say someone's name, like, that's like when I see you out in the streets, we fighting because you said my name. Like, it's very combative to rap. Like, you can't take it's almost like having a public debate with a sword. It's like, yeah, let's have a public debate. And then I come up and I have a sword in my hand. And I'm like, yeah, we're gonna have a public debate using fencing. And it's like, I just don't think that is gonna be productive. You know what I mean? Like, so that's my thing with rap. Like, I don't have a problem with a cat being like, all right, let me write this blog post. Let me write this book. One, because you can be well thought out, and the actual vehicle to which you would be, you'd be using is more thoughtful, and it's used to think and debate. Rap is usually used in whatever form that you use it is for that. But here's the thing, my bigger thing is I'm actually in the industry. So, like, I know the conversations that have in the background. So it's like, dudes will write a rap song about it, but they won't come and talk to you about it. That's whack. You know what I'm saying? And then at the same time, if we were to say, what do most people have an issue with? It's with methodology. And there's no amount of diss records that you can write or things that you can write to make someone change their method. Like, that's not necessarily productive either. You know what I mean? Like, it's cool, but that's what it is. So my whole thing at Legacy, to be honest, I don't like, man, listen, Shaolin, Lecrae, all these cats, they grown men. I mean, they have children that are in school. Like, I don't really necessarily, there's nothing I could say that's going to make them do what they're going to. One thing my mom said, a grown man is going to do what a grown man is going to do. So, like, I don't find myself here having what I said at Legacy to try to convince Shaolin to not say anything else about Lecrae or anyone else. I'm thinking about these young guys that are watching, and I'm like, man, don't do that. That's not cool. You know what I mean? If you have an issue with somebody, and then if we're talking about public debate or having an issue with somebody, let's talk about what the Bible says. It says if you have a problem with them, you put your gift down at the altar and you go talk to them. It also says that if someone is in sin or whatever, that you go to them, then you take another person with them. You know, you take another person to go talk to them. You don't just, it'd be different if Paul was like, listen, if you have a beef with somebody in the methodology, you go and you send a letter to the whole world and let them know how you feel. You know what I mean? So I think you just have, sorry, I'm out in East Nash, and I thought I was going to go into my office, and I guess I'm going to have to finish this podcast in the car.
Oh, no worries. We won't go super long.
Yeah, but it's cool. But do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't have a problem with public debate, but I'm like, if you're going to debate me, don't debate me with a sword.
Yeah.
And on top of this, with the Christian hip hop versus rapper, that's a Christian thing. I mean, God, if we're talking about even the Shaolin Lecrae thing, there's a video from 2013 where they had a public forum to debate it at the Unashamed conference in front of hundreds of people. Like, and this is something that's been going on for 30 years. And it's like, it comes upon a time where you're like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of this? I'm like, listen, if you feel like music should have theology as the main meat of the records, then just create a space for people to make that kind of music. You know, you never, like, this is a circular debate. It's never gonna stop because it's really opinion based. Just like big government, small government. You're never gonna have there's never gonna be a resolution. Like, all the Democrats are not gonna be like, this will be like, you know what, man, y'all are right. Let's make the government smaller and just give the states more power. And then Republicans are never gonna be like, you know what, y'all are right. Let's give all the power to the federal government. It's never going to work that way.
Well, and I will let me just say this, and then we'll go ahead and we'll pivot into a different topic. I'm actually going to intro just say, hey, if you don't care about this, just fast forward about 5 minutes in. But I wrote an article back in 2009 for Relevant about the problems Christian hip hop was facing for growth, and have seriously gotten, like, still a decade later, almost, people find me and will, like, hate tweet me about it, which it doesn't bother me. I don't care. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, Ruslan is a friend who was in that. I've met Shai. The takeaway I took from it, which if you read the article, kind of on the more theological camp, even just some of the hate that I'm getting on YouTube and on Twitter right now, like, clearly the more theological camp, that crowd, I don't think wants me hanging around, and I don't think necessarily those artists want me as a fan, and that's okay.
Right.
That's okay. Like, that's not for me. I would rather know that that's not for me, and that's okay. That they're not speaking to me. That their spaces, their live shows are not for me. Okay, that's I mean, at least we're obvious about that. Where I find that to be a little perplexing is that if you're not okay with other Christians, like, how you think you're getting the music to anybody that's not a believer. But that's for them to do whatever they want with. I mean, I am not a part of that community. It's funny. I have somebody that's in Christian hip hop that's been, like, mad at me for years on Twitter, and we've never met, and I never engaged this person. And multiple people have reached out to apologize for this person's behavior. And it's like, we were never in a relationship. This person lives in a different part of the country. We never met. I'm good. Like, it doesn't bother me that they don't like me. Like, because they would try to patch it up. And I'm like, well, I don't have a responsibility to go around to everybody that leaves a negative comment on one of my articles. I've been writing for 14 years. I'm not upset. I have no ill feelings. But, like, I got stuff to do during the day. I don't need to hop on a call with somebody that doesn't like me just so they can tell me they don't like me.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, here's the deal, man. If grown folks minded grown folks' business, we'd be a lot better off. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, at some point, when does this become childish? Like, when does it become childish? Like, when does it become a thing where we're crying wolf, where everything is so bad every time that we get passionate about something, and we're like, man, we're gonna write a record about it or a blog about it. We're crying wolf so much, saying, okay, hey, this is the big one. That everything is always the end of the world. That's how I feel about that whole Christian rapper that's a Christian thing. It's like you're watching, Lecrae do something, or watching this, whoever the theological rapper is, and everybody, nitpicking every single thing, to where, like, if you think about, even if we just take Lecrae, people are nitpicking everything that he does, that if he was to really do something really bad, like, it would just be another thing, just like with Donald Trump. Like, they're nitpicking every small thing and saying, okay, this is the thing, we should have never, like, it's like, see, I told you guys. And it just makes people just polarizes them. And I just feel like, coupled with the idea of the delivery with that, how Shaolin did that, or how, it's not even just Shaolin. I mean, this is a product of something that's been going on for 30-something years. Guys sneak dissing each other in tracks and openly dissing each other in tracks. And it's just like a combination of all that, to me, doesn't seem like the most productive thing to do. In my personal opinion.
By the way, if you if you want to get more of kind of where this is coming from, I've got a summary of this whole thing, relevantmagazine.com. I'll go ahead and throw a link in the show notes. Let's go ahead and pivot on one footnote there real quick. When you talk about people that are just going off on Twitter about Trump and that's what they're doing, you know, the career they're killing, theirs. And not even because like it's divisive and it's like, oh, and I'll throw out two people, you know, you don't have to name names. I will. Two people I like, but Anne Lamott and Rachel Held Evans. They're torpedoing their careers, not because like, oh, well, now conservatives aren't going to buy their books. They're torpedoing their careers because they've stopped working, because yelling about Trump is now their full-time job. And it's like, no, you have important work to do in the world. And there is some space for criticizing and talking about what's going on. But you are so far over the ledge that you can't do your work. And the only person that's going to suffer is you and me as the reader. I mean, I like both those authors a lot. You know, I like when you get that obsessed with somebody else, you are not forging your own path in the world. And
absolutely,
so that's a way to put a bow on it. Which in a way relates to what we're getting into. So, you know, for people who aren't into Christian hip hop, Lecrae is obviously a huge name. If you're into hip hop at all right now, the man is on a multi-year run. It's going really well. He's one of the biggest stars in hip hop. You were on Lecrae's label for a few records, and you wound up leaving back when the label was more conservative as far as like not speaking out about social issues, which is something that you're doing. And it's funny because like you and Sho Baraka both left to, you know, I don't want to speak for why you left, but Sho's talked about why he left, that he needed to maybe say some things he couldn't say in the context of being on the label at the time. And now the label has gotten to be a lot more, you know, sociologically active, maybe is the right term.
Right.
You know, I think it's fascinating, the space we're in. You know, Colin, like, and let me just say about football, okay? It's probably like the 8th sport as far as like I didn't grow up with it. I grew up in an area where high schools are too small to have high school football teams. They didn't have enough kids. So it's below, you know, basketball, baseball, UFC, MMA, boxing, hockey. I have more interest in the CrossFit games than I do in the NFL. I'm not angry. I've just never really watched it.
This dude is savage.
I just don't care. But as somebody who watched about a half a Bears game last year, because their training camp is at my college, and I actually did get to meet and interact with several players, so I that's enough for half a game a year. Colin Kaepernick, I don't think is as bad as Jay Cutler. And Cutler just got picked up by the Miami Dolphins out of desperation. Kaepernick, who, you know, let me say the good and the bad about him. The good is that he's done, regardless of whatever you think of his kneeling, he has done a lot of charity work in the last year, both in the United States and outside the United States. He is not I don't get what he was doing exactly, because he didn't try to accomplish anything, which bothers me a little bit. Like, he didn't try to do anything. He wanted to make a statement, and he's allowed to, but he didn't try to do anything. I am very bothered that as a society, we will, Floyd Mayweather should be in prison, hands down. And I am the chief of hypocrites, because Floyd Mayweather will make money off of me on August 26th, because I want to see that fight so bad. But, you know, Allen Iverson, you know, beat a dude half to death when he was 17 years old at a bowling alley. And again, I'm a hypocrite because I kind of like the whole big three thing going on this summer with Allen Iverson. You know, we forgive athletes for things that are so much worse than what Colin Kaepernick has done, and we're fine with it. And then the other element is that that if Colin Kaepernick were in the NBA, this really wouldn't be a big deal. Washington Post had an article about that. I 100% agree, because people do say and do stuff like this in the NBA and nobody cares. I don't get exactly why NFL owners are more, and they're like, you know, I know that the argument is, well, people don't want to watch him. Well, some people don't want to watch him. Other people are obsessed with him. He had the #1 selling jersey last year, and he wasn't a starter, right? So I'll let you jump in right there on starting to untangle that, but that's the road I want to go down.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what else there is to say. There's like 4,000 million trillion articles on it, but I think it's simple. It's money. One thing that these owners are businessmen. Like, I don't think it has anything to do with his stance on flags and people really being upset about that. I think it's money. They're worried whoever signs him, like the Ravens, I think were interested in him or someone else, and fans start saying, we'll boycott the game. And then Colin is not going to be a Raven. And I think it's that simple. It's that basic. I mean, money makes the world go round. If during this climate, people didn't care, he'd be on a team.
Okay.
People care. And that's just what it, and in my mind, that's what it is. You know, these owners, one thing about them, because you got to think, I mean, the NFL is a culture and there's different cultures within the culture. So I feel like obviously there's racism and people don't like each other and all these things, but that never stops anyone from signing contracts or giving out contracts. Like, it never does. Only thing that does that is when those controversies begin to affect the bottom line. And that's what's happening here to me. In my opinion, I'm more of just one of those, like, I'm not going to say I'm a realist because I think everyone's opinions probably have a degree of validity to them. But and there's tons of people that don't like people for their stances and religious, and they don't like them. But if they can bring them championships, or if they can bring them tickets, they'll get on the team. That's just how business works, in my opinion. I like to think that it was more noble than that, or more sinister than that, but I think it's money. Quite honestly.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, no, you've seen time and time again. And even like, if you want to switch over to the entertainment thing, I can't remember which network had Duck Dynasty. I watched one episode of it ever when I was at my parents' house. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that, when the network suspended Phil Robertson from some comments he made in GQ, they would have, I'm sure that the only emotion stronger than looking down on this family, and I say this as someone who, I'm a film and TV critic. I get to go to movie theaters. I get access to this world. I may be getting to interview Ava DuVernay in a couple of weeks about A Wrinkle in Time. I'm sure that what I know about Hollywood, the only emotion that the network felt stronger than disdain for the Robertson family was glee at how much money they were making off of them. It's like, they hate them, but you know what? You're filling my bank.
Yes. You are getting a check cut, so let's go. Yeah.
So, I think you're right. And, unfortunately, what is just versus what happens, we don't necessarily have control over. So should Colin Kaepernick not get to work in a world where, Adrian Broner just fought in boxing, a week ago and got his head handed to him. But Broner beat up over again in a bowling alley. I don't know what's up with all these pro athletes and getting in fights at bowling alleys, but Broner savagely beat a guy. They were gambling over bowling, and the guy got $6,000 down and couldn't pay, and Broner just beat him and should be in prison, without a doubt. We're more forgiving of that than a guy that takes a knee. And I'm not saying that's right by any means. I'm not defending that. I'm just pointing out, like, kind of the American hypocrisy here.
We're definitely hypocrites.
And like I said, me chief of all of them, because I'm going to watch this Mayweather-McGregor fight because I can't not. But
absolutely.
So you were in a kind of a good situation. As far as people in your lane, Reach Records would be where you'd want to be. You did 2 records with them, and you struck out on your own. And it's funny because I really think that, and I have nothing but respect for Lecrae. I haven't actually met him. He was kind of coming up bigger as I got out of radio, so we never crossed paths. But it certainly seemed like you and Show left, and then he kind of followed you guys down that trail. Whether intentionally or not, that's what happened. But At what point did this tension between like money and activism, or saying some things that weren't popular, how did that play out for you? That's what I want to unpack and get into.
Yeah, I think, Reach was always the conservative Christian urban alternative for music, So, and I did okay in that, and I have a career off of that. And much of my base is still from those Reach days. So, but, if you were to listen to my music, I always had things that probably rubbed against that. That's not necessarily why I'm not at Reach, because during the time I was there, behind the scenes, things were beginning to change. You know what I mean? So for me, it just literally was the type, like, if I had a choice, it was either go back to Reach, but it's not fair to keep stringing, like, because I wanted to own, I own my own record label. I went to school for music business and all those different things. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not fair to keep asking these people, can we do another album together? Can we do another album together? Like, they're going to be like, hey, if we're investing in you, we want to invest in you for 3 or 4 albums down the road. We don't just want to do another album with you. Like, that's just smart business on their part. And then for me, I had, we had to make the decision. Do I want to re-up with them and be here for, multiple years, or do I want to go ahead and strike out and do my own thing? And that's kind of what it is. It never was really, because I'm the type of person that you put me anywhere, I'm going to still be myself. If you put me at a Trump rally, I'm going to still be myself. Or you put me at an Obama rally, I'm going to still be myself. Like, that's just kind of how it is. And I'm always the type of person that's like, wherever I'm at, I'll just make do with what I have, but I'm still going to be flat-footed. And that works out for me sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't work out as like how I like it. But with this, it was just, man, I want to own my masters. I grew up looking up to guys like Dr. Dre and looking up to guys like Jay-Z. Like, so the 444 album really connected with me really heavy, because that's kind of who I've always wanted. That's what I've always been on, is empowerment for my community, empowerment for myself. Like, I want to be able to give my masters to my children, and that be an income source for them, like legacy, things of those nature. So that's kind of what I thought through. And it's not to say everyone that's signed to a record label doesn't have anything to give away or whatever. But for me, knowing what I'm capable of doing, that would be operating in a way that probably wouldn't be the best version of myself. So literally, I would, that's what it is. As far as this change where guys have went politically and where they've went as far as their voices, I'm excited that they're doing that. They should be doing it. And I think some of that is everyone growing and maturing. And as you get older, you just don't care as much. Like, that's kind of, older people, like, just the older you get, you kind of like, what I have to lose. And I think just for Lecrae, he's just kind of like, man, he's at a place in his career where he's like, man, I'm not going to keep being quiet about injustices to make everyone comfortable. Like, we have to be, sometimes I have to make you uncomfortable in love to get you to truth, and I'm happy with that.
Well, what's funny about, and Lecrae, I think, has taken the most criticism because he's been the most high profile. What's funny about, kind of if you're a rapper and your fan base is more in the mainstream, artists who were more active, like Vic Mensa apparently was at the Dakota Access Pipeline stuff. J. Cole was in New York. He was in Ferguson as things were happening in the cities. Baltimore, I think he was marching there. And he weren't necessarily trying to build their platform. In a lot of ways, they were ignored and put on the back burner compared to like artists that were saying stuff in songs that didn't actually do anything or give any money or do anything.
Right, exactly.
On the Christian hip hop side of things, or artists that have a strongly faith-based audience, right? It's like, well, why are you talking about that? Like, and like, I appreciate And I think artists ought to be artists, and the job of an artist is to look at the world and describe what you see. And even when I don't agree with them, I think that's what they ought to be doing. And sometimes, like, when they go to a place I can't go, then I kind of go, okay, well, I just can't go there with you. I don't think that necessarily, makes you bad. Like, I ranked the Kanye West records when everybody's like ranking Jay-Z records on social media when 444 came out. I ranked them and I said, and then 50 feet of crap, and then Life of Pablo. Kanye has gone to a really narcissistic place where I don't want to follow him. I don't want to see the world through his eyes. But I may not like, the point that I wind up disagreeing with some people about is, like Baltimore, Laquan McDonald, Freddie Gray in New York, or he was in Baltimore. All of these shootings, I would probably say are not justified under the law. I mean, especially Philando Castile, because I could really feel myself in that one because I'm a concealed carry permit holder, right? I disagree on the Ferguson one. That's the one I think was justified because there was blood in the car. I still think that if Cray sees it differently as me, or as you see it differently as me, I think you ought to be out saying that, as to where artists with a lot of fans in, within the Christian space are saying, like, why are you saying anything? They're saying anything because they think this is one of the most important things in the world right now. And like, I don't get how you don't see that, even if you don't agree with it.
Yeah, I feel like for many Christians, so we take the Bible scripture to talk about like being in the world and not of the world. And I think oftentimes what we apply to that is a cultural disconnect. We're here, but we're not in the culture. And I think that because of that, Christians only want to hear about Christian things. You know what I mean? So they want me to do more songs about, 2 John, or, you know what I'm saying, 1 John, 2 John, you know what I'm saying? They want me to do songs about James. They want me to do songs about the hypostatic union. They want me to do songs about, they want me to do songs about, the deity of Christ. And I like songs like that, and I've done songs like that. But for me, it's hard for me. The reason why over my career, it's really hard for me to ignore things that happen in the urban culture is because I actually live there. I talk about drug abuse and things in my song because many of my family are drug addicts, or they have been, or a lot of my friends have done drugs, and I see the effects that it has. I am passionate about education and looking at the systematic oppression of certain people. Like when you look at like education and you see how under-resourced education is for minorities, like that affects me because I'm a minority. My son is a minority. My cousins and nieces and nephews are minorities. And I've been blessed to be able to pop out of the where I came from and to actually see things that, so it's almost like it's the idea of like you get adopted and go to a different neighborhood and you're like, what the heck? Y'all guys, you have all of this stuff? What is this? Oh, you guys have a merry-go-round in the front of your house, and you guys have a coffee shops, and you guys have all these swimming pools and stuff. Where I came from, we don't have any of those things, and that's just basic things for you guys. So that's how it is with the education thing. It's like, like, wait a minute, all you guys have iPads in your classrooms, and back. Well, my cousins, they don't have iPads in their classroom, so they don't understand tech. That's going to affect them 10 years from now. So I'm passionate about those things because I'm there. I live there. And I think for oftentimes with Christians, they don't live in those worlds. You know what I'm saying? Or their answer is, well, this world doesn't matter this fleshly world doesn't matter. And that's not Christianity. That's Gnosticism. You know what I mean? So some people have like a Gnostic approach to life.
If I can unpack that real quick, just for people who may not know what Gnosticism is, which is most of them, that has a lot to do with Greek philosophy, Plato, Socrates, and it's basically forgive me, but a bastardization of Christianity and Greek philosophy that's kind of lived on within the Christian faith. If we can get into the education thing for a second, because I think you and I kind of differ here. You know, one of the things that you know, kind of drives me crazy is you know, as somebody who leans conservative and doesn't vote that way all the time, but to me, the most conservative thing you can do too. The most conservative thing you can do is spend money now to make people employed and stable citizens who pay taxes and don't go to prison, don't wind up on welfare, don't get caught in a cycle of poverty where their kids do the same thing. You know, the Ben Carson story where somehow you make it out just by pulling yourself out by your bootstraps is 1 in a million, right? Like that just does not happen a lot. Like I was in public housing and then I became this amazing neurosurgeon. Doesn't happen a lot.
Right.
You know, I have yet to see the system. I don't think we've unlocked that yet. I don't think we've figured that out. As far as education goes, I'm much more likely to want to blow it up because honestly, like I look at like the average millionaire had like a 2.7 GPA. I honestly believe I would have been better off if I could have dropped out of high school my last 2 years and just done whatever I wanted. Like I would have self-studied and done, and I was valedictorian in my class. I played by the rules. You know, I got a full ride to my first year of college on academics. I played by the rules, and honestly, but I probably would have better used my time. I think I could have been self-disciplined enough and done something more interesting. So I don't know that that necessarily the cure is going to be more iPads in a failing system because the United States is falling behind anyway. And it's not that I don't think there's, you know, education problems in, you know, poor neighborhoods in urban and rural America, because there definitely is. There's definitely huge funding problems.
Absolutely.
But I am more in the vein of like torch it all, and come up with something else. You know?
I totally agree with you in the sense of, hey, this isn't working. Let's go look at what Sweden is doing. Let's go look at what Finland is doing, and let's try to create a different school system. I'm with you there. Like if that's an option, then by all means, let's go for it. But if we're just talking about right now, if we're going to be in this system for the foreseeable future, right, the immediate concerns of what's happening in the foreseeable future, it's not fair that one zip code gets millions, hundreds of millions, and another zip code gets 1 million. You know what I mean? It's not fair that one zip code gets 10 million and another zip code gets 1 million, because no matter how you slice that, that's going to affect the people in that zip code, right? Yeah. So and so that's where I'm at. Like, I'm totally with you, man. Let's torch the whole thing. Let's start from scratch. Let's rebuild something that's actually, because we're educating people based off of a manufacturing education. So it's, you do this and we teach you how to manufacture widgets, and then you go into the world. Well, the reason why our system is failing, because that's a dated ideology. Like, the manufacturing industry is not what it used to be, and it's not the primary source of funds. So we have to start being able to, we have to adapt education to where the world is now. So I'm totally with you. But at the same time, for those people that are in school and the system is the way that it is, if we're looking at a certain area and it's like, okay, this zip code, 10 million, this zip code, 1 million. What's the difference? It's really easy where the money goes. Like, I haven't seen a zip code that's like, oh gosh, most of the minorities are getting $10 million towards this school. And all the rich white people are only getting $1 million towards the school. Like, I've never seen that happen in the United States. So it can't be that it can't be that it's not, the color has nothing to do with how that happened.
Well, and I don't know how to, again, I don't know how to fix it. And I try to be careful about not speaking too much on, stuff that I'm not really well read on. But one example I do
Absolutely.
is seeing a school district that I lived in, and my wife and I don't have kids yet, so I was single at the time. I didn't have kids at all. I mean, I wasn't married, so I was very not invested in the school system. But the district I lived in, I know they had about a 5% attendance of college rate, right? And they got more and more money each year, and I don't know what they got compared to rich districts, but you didn't get better. And that doesn't mean that that's like that at every school. So if you just have, like, honestly, people who are checked out and then they have more money, but the staff is still kind of checked out, more money is probably not going to fix a checked out staff either. So we're getting into.
Well, oftentimes what checks the staff out is they're under resourced. Like my brother worked at elementary school, and he's like, man, they want us to pass, and it's one of the worst elementary schools in the county. And he's like, they want us to pass all of these tests and things of that nature. But the problem is the classes are too big. So therefore, since we can't hire enough teachers and teachers assistants, then what happens is, and it's like, there's a lot of people here, so we can't hire enough teachers and teachers assistants. So the teachers are burnt out because they're working, as opposed to if you go to another area where they have tons of funds, they can say, oh, wow, this class is way too big. Okay, let's split this up and let's hire this other teacher. So these teachers are underpaid, under-resourced, and overworked. So it's like there's no way that they're going to be able to not be checked out. There's no way they can't be checked out. So that's the issue. That's now that's just from my personal experience. You know what I'm saying?
I know
from
a
my
lot
brother,
of times,
you know what I mean?
like Title I and Title II schools get money for specific things, and then they'll just get to use it however they want. I mean, that's where I would get into where I lean more conservative. I mean, I would love to blow up the Department of Education. Just send it to the states, send it to the schools, and you know what? Some of them are going to not do a good job. But people already move around because school districts are bad. So some of them are going to get a lot better, and they're going to attract a lot more people. And then all of a sudden, you actually do have pressure on the bad schools that they're going to lose their funding. And so it's not something. It's not something I want to go too much further down that road because I'm not well read on it. I don't want to speak on it. But if we can get back to, I don't know if the fact that you've spoken out about, social justice issues, has it really, has it hurt your career? Has it not? Because, dude, you're doing a stadium tour this fall. So, it obviously didn't tank your career. Did you feel like you were taking a risk with your income, or did you did it wind up helping you in any way? Where do you land on that?
I probably, I probably could do a lot better than I'm doing now if I was quiet. That's just historically, if you look at people that speak out, often minorities, look at minorities that speak out, they're kind of not the guys that you invite to do more things, and I've had people tell me, I'll never buy your albums again because of where you stand politically or where you stand about these justice issues, which I think is total bull crap. Cause I'm like, man, I could, just because I disagree with you don't mean I think it's immature, but I feel like much of the world is immature. I could be like, oh man, I don't like where you stand, but hey, let's go get dinner. You know what I mean? Like you may say some stuff that offends me, but I'm not going to be like, I'm going to write you off because you said something I don't like. But most, there's tons of people that have said that to me musically, which is it's fine. It's okay. I think for me, it's worth it though. I don't know. I try not to think about that because that's frightening, but what if the prophets in the Bible, were worried about those things? Hey, how you doing? What if the prophets in the Bible were worried about those things? Would they speak out? Nah. So I try not to really dwell on that much, but yeah, I'm sure if I played the game a little bit more smart, I probably would be a little further along, you know.
Although,
But so far, God has sustained me. Like you said, I'm doing another arena tour. I did an arena tour earlier this year. So, I mean, after what I said during the seasons of Mike Brown and Trayvon Martin, if people were going to throw me in the trash totally, then they would have already thrown me in the trash. So I don't think I could make my stances any more clear. I'm kind of like, I'm that guy now, you know, when anytime something happens, they're like, okay, what do you think about it? You know? So
the and I want to let you get back to work because I know you're working on a project today. But I mean, specifically, you know, what statements got a lot of pushback when you know, we're a little bit past that in some ways, right? Like Trayvon Martin's has been 4 years, maybe
yeah,
5.
yeah,
I mean, we're 2 or 3
it's
years
been a long time.
past Mike Brown and Ferguson. So I mean, what was it? Just basically vocal saying, you know, hey, you thought both of these things were murder, you know, which for the record, I only think one of them was murder. I think one of them was self-defense. But like, and not that I'm trying to.
No, I think it's my criticism of how police officers handle black bodies. Not those. I don't think you can point to one specific thing, but I think it's the fact that, you know, especially certain people in the Christian space, they want me to be like, nah, Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization and Blue Lives Matter. And it's like, well, I'm like, well, both Black Lives and Blue Lives Matter, you know, and you can't say all lives matters to combat Black Lives Matters, because then not a movement, you're just really trying to undercut something, you know, like, so people want me to take this, you know, often in American Christianity, Christians are Republicans. I'm neither Republican nor Democrat. So people think because I don't necessarily agree with everything that Trump is doing or whatever, that I'm a Democrat. And it's like, no, I'm a moderate. I'm one of those guys that towards the end of the political season, people begin to pander to. Like, I'm that guy, you know, I'm the moderate. So for me, I think because I'm not a staunch Republican, and I don't have a problem criticizing a Franklin Graham or a Jerry Falwell. I don't have a problem saying that's not Christian, you know, or, you know, not saying that they're not Christians, but if they say something that's politically motivated, I don't have a problem calling BS on it. You know, I'm sure those guys are great guys. You know, I've never met either one of them, but I'm sure they're great guys and their reputation speaks for itself. But everyone makes mistakes and everyone says things that are off. And when I say something that's off, like, people are okay with letting me know, you know, so I'm okay with using my platform to say, hey, you know, guys, if you're going to support, like, my thing, like, even with politics, like, this is my stance overall on politics. Like, don't tell me which politician is the Christian choice. Just tell me these are good choices. I think and that's the issue that I often have had. So because I'd be like, you know, people would say, well, Trump is the Christian choice. And I'm like, no, that's not true. Like, there is no Christian choice. There's just what's the best choice with what you have. So for my convictions and how I understand my faith, you know, Hillary may have been the better choice, you know, but for someone else, Trump may have been a better choice with what they have and what they understand. So, like, for me, it's like, let's not try to make Republicans the Christian party, because that's not true. And that's not fair for all of the Christians that vote for Democrats. But likewise, let's not say, oh, if you don't vote for Hillary, you're not voting for justice. Like, that's not fair either. You know, so that me taking stances like that are what usually get me in hot water, because oftentimes people just want to put it in the box. They don't want to think that this could be nuanced. They just want to put it in a box. Christian. Okay, Republicans, pro-life, and they're anti-abortion and they're anti-gay. So therefore, Republican is the Christian choice. I'm like, no, it's a little bit more nuanced than that, fellas. You know, and vice versa. Some people will say, well, Democrats, they're the Christian choice because they're pro-welfare, you know, taking care of charity to the poor, and, you know, they're, you know, oftentimes they lean towards, less restrictive laws with privatized prisons and justice issues. They usually are more apt to fight for justice issues, social justice issues. And I'm like, nah, I don't think that's the Christian choice either. Like, it's nuanced. So now let's just come and say, okay, what's the best option we have with what we got? And usually with me saying something is even, to me, that's even kosher. Like, that's just logic. But oftentimes that's what gets you persecuted, is that I'm not, the staunch Republican.
Well, and I would say, if I can piggyback on that, and I voted for Trump and walked out and wondered if it was one of the worst things I'd ever done, and still feel like that, except I just couldn't vote for Hillary. I'm still conflicted about it. I backed into a corner. I made the decision I made. I said I wouldn't do it. I said I wouldn't do it the week of. And then when it came down to a Supreme Court pick, I did it. I think he's an idiot. I think he's a terrible president. I think that all these Trump-trained people, I will never let them forget that we are going to have a freaking socialist president in 2020, and it's going to be their fault. And I will slam that down their throats for the rest of their lives, which is completely the opposite of what the show is about, finding common ground.
Yes, it's going to be definitely, it's going to definitely swing the other way.
We are going to wind up with a younger Bernie Sanders. And people are like, oh, Bernie Sanders should run. Bernie Sanders is going to be 109 years old in 4 years. No, seriously, and all jokes aside, Bernie Sanders in 4 years, if he's still alive, will have outlived the average male lifespan. Bernie Sanders has aged out, okay?
Absolutely.
But, to kind of close this thing out, where I probably have more political disagreements now, it tends to be with people who have always said they were conservatives, and they're just as big government as Democrats. It's just now they want now they're way more on big government because they control it, as to where I'm saying the executive branch and the judiciary branch have way too much power. And the reason Congress is so slow and so broken is that, as I believe I said on another episode, the office of the president kicked him in the balls and pushed him down a hill, and they can't work because we've given so much power to basically a monarch that switches every 4 to 8 years. And I don't care if it's a monarch I like. I still don't want a king or queen. I don't want it. To wrap this thing up, obviously I kind of feel like maybe, like, as far as speaking out and being politically, or socially active, or however you want to say it as an artist, I kind of feel like you get to a point where you're through it. Like Colin Kaepernick, there's only, 32 NFL teams or whatever. So he only has so many chances to work. And if one of those people don't pick him up, that's it. As an artist, you kind of make your own audience, right? And some of them, well, you're doing back-to-back stadium, not quite back-to-back. You're doing 2 stadium tours in a year. Like, obviously, like, you came through it, you would probably say it's worth it. If some people leave, some other people are going to come in. So I would say that maybe entertainers and athletes are in a different, or musicians and athletes are in a different situation, kind of like movie stars. Like, there's only so many movies.
Absolutely.
You can't go out and make your own project. You can and do, and, started your own company. So, is that kind of how we want to put a bow on this thing? And the differences?
Yeah, well, I think the end of the day is this, man. People know when you are passionate, and sometimes when you're passionate can rub people the wrong way. But one thing I feel like that draws people to what I do is just love. No matter where I go, whether someone agrees with me or not, they're gonna get the same big bear hug from Derek. And I think that once people see that, it begins to perceive, like, my reputation perceives me as a loving person, So I think if I was a jerk, then I probably wouldn't be doing back-to-back arena tours. But I'm not. I'm passionate about people. Like, that's what, if I was going to put a bow on it, like, I don't have opinions for opinion's sake. I have opinions because I care. You know what I mean? And one thing about me, if anyone that knows me knows that if it comes to my opinions winning or a person winning, I'll put my opinions aside in a minute and just grab you and just love you. where you're at. You know what I mean? And I've seen, man, I remember I put out this song called Free, and this woman told me she was furious. But I saw her on the last tour that I was on, and it was like a Christian tour, Rock and Worship Road Show. I was the only black guy on the bill, probably one of the few in the crew. It was like three of us out of a crew of a lot of people, and it was cool. I enjoyed it. But what was cool about it was, I came in and she said, "Yo, you did that song Free, and you put that video out, and I was furious with you. But as I began to follow you and watch how you interacted with people and your music, and I listened to the whole story, I have so much respect for you." And it made me go rethink how I thought about issues like Alton Sterling and Philando Castile and all those guys. She said it made me rethink that. And that's what I'm here for, bro. Like, man, I've won double award. I got a double award, a Stellar Award, and a Grammy. I got a gold record for producing for Lecrae, all those things. None of that stuff matters as much than what that letter that lady gave me, because that means that I may have impacted her, her children, her grandchildren. And that's what the gospel's about, man. Like, that's why I started making music. It's for people, loving people, man. You know what I mean? I think that's why I'm able to continue working when it's all said and done.
Let's go out on this, my friend, if that's all right. You got a single out, so I'm assuming you're going to finish the record. It's going to be out before the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to put a clip of the single. People will have already heard it. I'll put it in the intro.
Right.
How much are you talking about some of this stuff that's been controversial? Like, how much are you talking about social issues this time around? Like, how much does this inform the songs?
Oh, man. So this is what's happening. I'm actually dropping a series of projects. We haven't even done a press release, so this is like, you're getting this before everyone. But I'm dropping 4 projects in a row. And each project is themed differently. So I have one project that's going to be really heavily influenced by social injustice and things of that nature. So this one whole project would be dedicated to that.
Now, is this an EP or is it a full record, or where does this land? Like as far as the number of songs?
Number of songs, they're pretty hefty, man. Like, they're not quite an EP, but they're not quite an LP either. They just land, and they're all different sizes. So they
I would
all
call them
land
an
in
ELP,
different
but
places.
there's already an ELP in hip hop, and he's in Run the Jewels.
Right. Exactly, bro. So they're just like right in between. They're just long enough for you to be like, wow, I like this project, but they're just short enough to where it's not, overbearing. But it's called the Up and Away series. That's what we're calling it, and it's gonna be 4 projects in a row. And the first one's called Your Soul Must Fly. So that's what Astronaut, and I'm about to drop another single here pretty soon. That's all pushing towards that project. But we're doing 4 in a row.
And what are the other? So one of them's around social justice. What are the other 3 around then? Because I might just try to turn this into a press release myself. Get some.
Man, so we got 4 projects. The first project is called Your Soul Must Fly. The second project is called High Above. The third project is called The Trap, and the fourth one is called By Any Means. So the first project is Your Soul Must Fly, and it's the idea that everyone that's born has big dreams. Like, so the music sonically is like, it sounds like you're on a runway and taking off. It's really high energy. I like to call it like workout music. Like, it's that motivation music. So High Above, it sounds like you're on a cloud sonically. And the whole vibe of that is really this idea of, I remember being on a tour, and when I got off the tour, I was depressed, and I was like, man, why am I depressed? And what I realized was my focus had gotten, like, I had achieved my dreams, and everyone wants to achieve their dreams. But I had achieved the success from my dreams, but not necessarily my dreams. Because, you at one point in time, I'm like, hey, I want to do a tour. The next time you're like, man, I want to do an arena tour. And it's like, the higher up you go, it always seems like there's this other level that you have to get to. So High Above is really mostly kind of internal, and me talking about my struggles with, how high is high enough. So The Trap, which is the third project, is the idea of the trap is we chase money, we chase fame, we chase political power, we chase all these different things, and we get stuck in this trap when the real successes, the real way to fly is with family, God, community, all those things that are wholesome. Like that's how you fly. But the trap is chasing the money, the accolades, the awards. So that's the one that's going to have most of the heavy social content and all of that. And then the last one's called By Any Means. And I like to call it Chase God by Any Means. And it's the idea that if you chase God by any means, that's when you really can fly. And so that's the whole storyline that goes through it. So we have a whole rollout prepared. A lot of cool things that happen. I'm super excited. It's really good music, and it's meaningful music. It's music that I feel like everyone, no matter who you are, you'll be able to jump in on one of those projects, and I'm anticipating to find out what's going to be people's favorite project. Is really what I'm really excited about.
I'm guessing you're not just going to like flood the world with all four of those before the end of the year. This is going to take a little while to get all these going out. I mean, because there's only 4 months left of the year, basically, right?
You know, I can't tell you necessarily the timeline, but you'll see though. You'll see. I'll just put it this way: two of them are already done.
Nice.
They're already mixed. So yeah.
Derek Minor has been very, very interesting. Man, I'd love to do this again if you got time. I will go ahead and throw a link to your tour dates and Twitter and everything else up in the show notes. So if you're listening and you want to connect with them, you can check it out over there. And you are out. I mean, you're pretty much out all fall. Depending on where you're at, there's a pretty good chance that you can catch him live. Anything else that I missed, or you just want people to know if they're just getting to know you?
Nah, man. DerekMinor.com. Hit me up. I'm there.
All right, just a couple notes as we wrap this thing up. First of all, I didn't know that Derek was going to announce 4 projects on the podcast that he never talked about publicly. So that's going to be a big help. So if you've never heard the podcast before, this exists to find common ground in an increasingly divided world. If you like this one, episodes 1, 3, 15, and 19 might be some other episodes to check out. Each one of them has a number by them. And really appreciate you stopping by, even if it's just for this one and you never come back. Hey, if you're waiting on my other new podcast, which puts me at 3, The Consultant and the Millennial, which is the podcast I'm doing with one of my business mentors, Hayden Shaw. I'm still waiting on iTunes to approve that. Apparently they have to hand approve every one of them, and I thought it would be done by now because normally it's done in a day, and apparently they can take up to 2 weeks to approve something, which is annoying. However, I do have a SoundCloud file of the first episode, and that's in the show notes, so you can go ahead and check that out there if you want to see some more about it. Don't forget I'm on the Jim Fannin Show as well, JimFannin, that's in the show notes also. Jim is the #1 success coach in the world. It's all brain science stuff. Some of the top pro athletes, actors, movie directors in the world use Jim, and we're pretty much throwing his whole system out there for free. So again, if you just found out what's going on, even if you don't necessarily come back to this one, that could be really, really helpful to you as you build whatever your career, family, hobby, sport life looks like. Okay, I think that'll do it for this one. Thanks for coming back and being a part of this thing. Every single episode has been growing past the last one, and that's only because of just unbelievable support and your passion to share this thing with other people, to start a conversation about how we create a more unified America again. All right, I'll see you on Friday for episode number 31, which I previewed in the intro.